I remember we're down 1 goal in Game 6, and we scored a tying goal there, and just the loudness in the building at the Air Canada Centre.
Here's a chance, Callaway holding, now the hit the post, it looked like it's loose, and it's in! With 21.8 seconds left, Sundin has tied the game for Toronto!
They score with 28.8 seconds left! The Leafs have tied the game!
And now behind the net, Sundin jumps out in front. Leafs are all over that there now. There's a chance at the line. Big shot by Connolly. Shoots, swing in, scramble, score! The Leafs have tied the game! And the place goes crazy!
И 1-1. За 21 секунду до окончания третьего периода 1-1. Торонто отыгралась. По-моему, Мат Сундин.
Don't tell me about heart and dedication and resilience. This is unbelievable.
It's one of my favorite moments, actually, being on the ice as a player in the Leaf uniform.
You scored the tying goal.
I did.
So we're tied. What else is new?
It is Sportsfeld Storytime. We are all the way back in 2002. It is May 28th, 2002. It's Game 6 between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Toronto Maple Leafs. The closest the Maple Leafs have been to a Stanley Cup in the last 20 years. They are basically 2 wins away from a Stanley Cup. When we last left you, Matt Sundin had just proven to you that you do not talk to Joe Bowen about heart and dedication and resilience.
I feel like he did that a lot over his career.
21.8 seconds left. Matt Sundin finally pots one.
The man. The fucking man.
Now, as we had talked about a couple times about the Carolina Hurricanes, and I think maybe just the style of hockey even pre-lockout, it was 100% based around making you make the mistake and hoping to capitalize on it. We saw it big time with the first goal scored by TSN OverDrive panelist Jeff O'Neill, stripping the puck from Thomas Carberlay. And unfortunately, we will see it again in overtime. But before we even get to that, you know, watching this playoff overtime game, and something we did as well in the previous series in the game against the Ottawa Senators, it's a really different feeling than watching basically, I think, anything else that there is.
Hockey sort of gets, not hockey, the NHL sort of has this reputation of having the best product with the worst management and sort of the worst everything around it. And I feel like when you're rewatching games like this or the Ottawa one, where you have the emotional connection, the nostalgia connection, the whatever, I think that's when that becomes the most apparent, because I'm never going to claim that hockey is my favorite sport by any means, but the Stanley Cup playoff hockey is really a different beast than any other sporting event. And then when you get to overtime, it really is just, it's painful almost in its like fun. Like I remember we don't have that much, evidence as adults with the Leafs, but I remember in the Washington series in 2016, which was very closely contested, multiple overtime series like this one was, that they also lost in 6 games. Like long or massive overtimes, like it's hard to not watch it just through your hands the entire time.
I don't know if it was just because I watched so much when I was in high school, or it was a sort of a feature of the style of game, or if I'm totally wrong about this, but it feels like back around this era, around the early 2000s, and maybe a little bit before and a little bit after, there were more marathon overtime games. Then I feel like things get solved maybe a little bit quicker. But I remember in this time, as a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kid, when an NHL playoff game went into overtime, I would bring food downstairs knowing that I was in for another hour plus of entertainment in my basement.
Yeah, and you really do have to sort of strap in back then. And it was also bring food down or whatever and ready for an hour plus. And then also sort of girding yourself against the fact that I think hockey overtime is so different in a playoff format because it's so quick in a lot of ways, even when the game is slow, in the sense compared to other sports where you don't have time to sit with anything. Whereas I think the reason that baseball playoffs are so stressful is because there's so much time between every pitch. You have time to dwell and to sort of think about what just happened, what could happen, what might happen, what didn't happen before and after. And basketball, it's just kind of constant. But with hockey, it's so fast. It's just the one goal. So there's no time to react to anything really. It's just anytime the puck crosses the red line into your team's end, it's just panic.
Yeah. And as we saw sort of in that flurry of chances in the triple overtime game in the Ottawa series, is often you have chances for both teams basically in the same shift, where it is because of the slowed pace, because guys have been playing for so long, and because of the fatigue and the exhaustion, one bad line change can lead to a minute and a half of just frenzy on both ends of the ice.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. There's hard to find a comparison because in baseball you have your turns batting, and basketball isn't sudden death, and football is very divided offense and defense. Hockey is really unique in that in the span of a second and a half, a game-winning goal can happen on either side of the ice, and that is really amplified in the playoffs. It really becomes, like you said, you can only watch it with your hands over your eyes through your fingers.
And I also think it's because of the margin for error is so slim. In baseball, if someone messes up, you still have that baseball randomness to sort of even the scales. And then like you said, in basketball, it's not sudden death. And baseball's not sudden death either, I suppose.
Right.
But it's just, there is that. Is hockey the only sudden death sport?
Well, football, technically.
I guess football,
But it is, right.
Yeah.
You could score a touchdown and that would end the game.
Right, but that's still a slow plodding thing.
Yes.
This is just it's over.
And it is often over in what feels like that exact snap of the fingers. The Maple Leafs, as we talked about in the previous episode, really looking like a team that has already played 20 playoff games. We're slower and older than the Hurricanes this entire time. And they do get, I forgot about this, but they do get a pretty decent chance about 2 minutes before this game ends. Gary Roberts leaves a draw pass for Jonas Höglander, and he could not possibly hit Arturs Irbe more square in the chest, right in the logo.
That's just the Jonas Höglander experience, I guess.
And Irbe does what goalies do in that age, is he just immediately lays down on his back. That's what.
Yeah. That was, I do remember that chance, or I'd forgotten it. No, I remember after rewatching it, but I remember being 13 and the next day, that was I think this happens a lot in all sports, but especially playoff hockey, where you're just if this had just done that, what
the Matt Fratton breakaway.
Exactly. And that shot is, I remember that being if Höglander can just get that past him, and then alas, 'twas not to be.
I wanted to bring this up before we do get to the game-winning goal, but we talked about Arturs Irbe as, I think I called him Kirkland store brand Dominik Hasek. I think one thing that is missing from the modern NHL, and this era I think had it in the perfect dash, is you need one or two totally swaggerless goalies. Goalies that wear like Canadian Tire equipment, like black forward helmet with just a cage on it, white pads, nothing fancy. There's something about him and Chris Osgood and Dominik Hasek, just that like looks like somebody didn't take any time finishing the creative player. There's something so annoying about losing to a goalie that looks like they're wearing hand-me-down equipment.
I feel like he didn't have it so much for the equipment, but James Reimer had that vibe to me very much so. Just like a guy you're like, come on, Reimer.
I mean, we did see the Leafs lose to a actual Zamboni driver, though. Maybe
that's true against Carolina.
Maybe touche. Maybe I just disproved my own point. But even then, it was like highlight of the year, right? That was
There's people. We're still talking about it. Had a literal worldwide pandemic since then, and we're still talking about the Leafs losing to a Zamboni driver.
It's going to be a Sportsfeld Storytime one day, years from now.
For sure. Oh, absolutely.
Because I was whooping it up that night. I was laughing as hard as I've laughed in a long time. It was a lot of fun.
I forget his name, but it's cool.
David Ayers.
David Ayers, thank you. Shows how much impact it had on me.
Evidently, yeah, scarred for life. No idea.
Blocked out that trauma.
Clearly. That was a funny trauma. This is a trauma.
That's true. That was a funny trauma.
So we talked about mistakes and we talked about overtime ending in a second flat. And that is unfortunately the exact story of this overtime winner. It looks as many plays in this series looked. It's just an innocent dump in. Carolina is bringing some pressure, but there's a release back pass to McGillney, and then he throws it into the boards. I know what he's trying to do, but there is nobody there to receive it. It's a turnover. It's a quick pass. It's a tip in, and the Carolina Hurricanes are going to the Stanley Cup Final.
Erickson there, bumped by Svoboda. Behind the net, falling away. Cedric, they score! Martin Jelena in sudden death overtime. And it's strange but true. Folks, the Carolina Hurricanes are going to the Stanley Cup Finals. Wow.
Yeah, it's I remember being crushed.
Absolutely crushed.
That my boy Alex McGillney was responsible as well.
I immediately, even now, years later, am trying to not assign blame to McGillney for this play. Because
it's really bad.
If you do watch right before he throws it across the ice, right before he gets it, I mean, the first thing is he has time to skate it out. He doesn't need to immediately dump it. But right before he gets it, he's skating right beside Tucker. And then Tucker takes 2 strides in the exact direction that his pass then goes. But by the time the pass is made, Tucker is not on the screen anywhere. He obviously doubles back to cover the point, I would guess. But man, he is not in the corner. And the Carolina Hurricanes are. And it's a pass out front and a redirection. Bada bing.
Yeah. I remember turning off the TV immediately when this goal was scored.
Is that how you react to OT losses?
Kind of.
Is that how you react to it was 4-1? Was that just an immediate TV off quiet?
No, that was just sitting in like...
You sulked in it.
That TV actually stayed on for a bit there because everyone was just sort of like stunned.
Yeah.
I think, generally speaking, TV just turns off in an OT loss. You get up, leave whatever room you're in, whatever you're doing. It's just off. We're done.
Yeah, because that's what I did. The Blue Jays losing to the Royals in 2015. It was like that season ended and I was gone within 2 minutes. I paid my bill and walked out of the bar within 2 minutes of the last out of that game. I was like, nope, bye. I was with people.
Yeah, I think I did that in the next year. I was quite drunk, but in 2016 when they lost to Cleveland, it was also just like, check, please. Time to leave.
Get me the fuck
Say
out
goodbye.
of here.
Yeah.
So the Maple Leafs lose, as they are wont to do. That's what the Maple Leafs do. TVs are off, and the Carolina Hurricanes, well, they make the Stanley Cup Finals. They take on the 116-point Detroit Red Wings in the next series, and they get served.
Let's be clear. The Leafs would have not beat.
No, with how tired they were and
Leafs
how
would have been destroyed.
Totally. I think with how tired the Maple Leafs looked in this series alone, and Detroit was unbelievable. Like, they were an unbelievable team in 2001, 2002. 116 points, like I said. They did a 7-game series against the Avs, which we all remember. Avs Red Wings was chef's kiss. That was as good as it got back then.
Is that the Patrick Waugh hot dogging one, or is that one of the many other
Yeah, they played
Avs
a lot.
Red Wings series at that time?
It is hard to remember, but they went 7. So that was a pretty hard fought series as well. But Carolina would win game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals and then be gentlemen swept out of the playoffs so that Detroit could win the Stanley Cup at home in game 5. So they didn't get much further. I don't think the Maple Leafs would have gotten much further, but
No, I can't imagine so.
I certainly was ready to watch Maple Leafs Red Wings as the Stanley Cup final. I'll tell you that much.
I feel like it just would have been it's Maple Leafs Red Wings, which would have been a thing, and B, just like the Leafs actually being in a Stanley Cup final would have been like, we all remember last year when the Raptors made the final, how like just making it felt so cool. Mm-hmm. Then everything else was like a bonus. I feel like for the Leafs, that probably wouldn't happen, because I think for the Leafs, it's every year is like win a cup or don't come home.
Yeah.
But I do think like there would have been less getting like gentlemen swept. There's no shame in getting gentlemen swept by the 2002 Red Wings.
No.
There's a little bit of shame of losing to the 2002 Carolina Hurricanes.
Literally, Colorado would have been the only team that I think had a shot at slowing down that Red Wings team, and they almost did it. No one else came close.
That Red Wings team, by the way, I assume because they had just locked everything up by this point, because they had 112 points at the end of March. They played 8 games in April and didn't win a single one. They got 4 points in April. I assume they just benched everybody, but
there goes my theory that you want the hottest team in the league on the way in.
yeah.
Well, if you're the best team in the league, it helps.
They lost the first 2 games of the first round as well.
And that was it. They lost 1 series after that, and then went 7, and then lost 1 against Carolina.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty damn good playoff run. But we digress. It's supposed to be at the Maple Leafs.
I'm just caught up in this Red Wings roster. Sorry.
I know. No, I know.
They're so good. Like nine Hall of Famers on this team.
Brendan Shanahan, another Maple Leafs connection.
Hall, Lidstrom, Robitaille, Yzerman, Larionov, Chelios, Datsuk, Draper, Holmstrom, Boyd Devereaux, Kurt Maltby, Matthew Dandino, Steve Duchesne. So good. So good.
Damn. Damn.
Yeah.
Pavel Datsuk at 23 years old played 70 games. Damn. I did not know that. There you go. So, Jake, your final thoughts on the 2002 Maple Leafs before we look forward and assess the damage after this team lost.
My final thought is that in the Stanley Cup Finals that year, Kirkland, Dominik Hasek played actual Dominik Hasek, which I think is kind of fun.
The least cool goaltending duo in the history of the Stanley Cup Finals. I'm
just 2 dollar store masks going head to head.
Yeah. They were out of good masks, so they just bought they got a forward mask and put a bigger cage on it.
I don't know how much there's more to say on this particular Leafs moment, Leafs team. Other than that, I really thought the next year they were going to they'd be back. I did not see the sort of drop off coming.
Yeah, and we'll get into this in the coming episodes, but they do make 2 more playoff runs with this core. And then, boy, things get dark. Things drop off pretty substantially after that. The league out to get them. I'll tell you that much. But we'll get into that.
It's true. It's rigged.
It's rigged. It is rigged. It's absolutely rigged. It should be rigged in favor of the Maple Leafs if you're going to rig it. We'll get into that. We will talk about the fallout and what happened in the next 2 playoff runs, as well as the depths that they hit shortly after on the next episode next week on Sportsfeld Storytime.
Oh, it feels great. I mean, our guys have battled hard all season long. 21 seconds away from clinching it to have that happen. Give our guys a lot of credit. Responded, came out, and found a way to get it done in overtime. Almost 7 seconds, almost 21, and to come back out in overtime and find a way to win it says a lot about our hockey club.
How about your goaltender?
He's been outstanding for us, and we need contributions from everybody every night if we're going to be successful. And certainly Archie was fantastic for us again in this series, and hopefully continue to do it again.